Welcome to Occult Archives.
Yeah,
We love diving into those books that, well, let's be honest, have kind of a spooky reputation.
right. Those books that maybe people thought were a little dangerous to even read, grimoires, ancient texts, that sort of thing.
We try to dig a bit deeper, though, uncover the mysteries and the myths, the stories behind the stories.
It's about understanding them, not just being scared of them, seeing them as part of history, part of how people thought about the world.
Exactly. And I think we do it in a way that's hopefully fun and a little bit intriguing, right?
Yeah, hopefully we bring a bit of curiosity and, well, maybe a bit of humor to it, too.
Definitely. So for episode 83, we thought we'd tackle a book that really caused a stir when it first came out.
Aradia, the Gospel of the Witches. Sounds pretty intense, doesn't it?
It does. We are talking about the one published back in 1899 by Charles G. Leland, Aradia, or the Gospel of the Witches. Full title, for those keeping track.
And we've got some great excerpts for you, straight from Leland's book. His preface, some early chapters really getting into the origins of Aradia and all the rituals.
A whole witches' Sabbath thing.
Yeah.
We'll get into all that. So our mission for this deep dive, right, is to break down the core ideas that Leland's trying to get across.
We're going to figure out what he's saying about Italian witchcraft, the importance of Diana and Aradia, and how it all fits into history.
Right. And we'll start, like we always do, at the beginning with Leland's preface. He jumps right in, talks about the Streghe.
Yeah, these are basically the witches or fortune tellers in Italy that Leland's focusing on.
He makes some pretty bold claims about them right off the bat. What really jumped out at you?
Well, the thing that I found fascinating is how far back he thinks these practices go. He's not talking about something new, something recent.
No, he's saying this has been going on for centuries, maybe even millennia.
Exactly. He throws out medieval times, Roman times, even the Etruscans.
For those who don't know, the Etruscans were in Italy before the Romans, their own whole culture, religion, everything.
Right. So Leland's suggesting this lore, this knowledge, has been passed down through families for like incredibly long time.
It's like a hidden thread woven through Italian history.
Mm-hmm.
But then he mentions that nobody in northern Italy, at least in his time, seemed interested in studying this stuff.
Yeah, why do you think that is? It seems pretty significant, right?
Well, Leland kind of hints at it. He says maybe people weren't looking in the right places. Or maybe they thought it was just, peasant superstition, not worthy of serious study.
But they were looking for answers in libraries and missing the stories people were living, right?
Exactly. And then there's the whole secrecy thing. Leland really emphasizes that.
Makes sense, right? If you're afraid of the church, you're not going to be broadcasting your beliefs about magic and witches.
And it's almost ironic, isn't it, that secrecy, the fear, might have actually helped to preserve these traditions.
Like a hidden treasure passed down quietly from generation to generation.
Speaking of passing down, Leland tells us how he got this information in the first place. He mentions meeting this woman in 1886. What was her role in all of this?
She's key to the whole thing. Leland credits her with being able to get this information, to draw it out from people who were part of these traditions.
Like she had access to this hidden world. And she's the one who actually wrote down the gospel for him.
Which raises a really interesting question, right? How much of this tradition was oral, word of mouth, and how much was actually written down?
Leland himself wrestles with that question. He seems to think most of it was passed down orally.
Yeah, like stories told around a fire. But he does mention that some wizards had written things down.
So there might have been some secret documents floating around too. Now, getting into the meat of it, the gospel centers around this idea of la vecchia religione, the old religion.
Right. And this religion is all about Diana, the goddess, and her daughter, Aradia, sometimes called Herodias.
She's kind of like a female messiah figure, but for witches.
And this is completely different from the mainstream religion of the time.
Oh yeah, a total counter-narrative. And the gospel lays out the whole story. Aradia's birth, her coming to earth, how she established witchcraft, and then going back to heaven.
It's like their own origin story.
The excerpts we have mentioned ceremonies, invocations to Diana and Aradia, even an exorcism of Cain. What do you make of all that?
Well, it shows you there's a system here, a set of beliefs and rituals. The invocations point to a personal connection with these deities.
Not just praying to a distant god, but actually calling upon these figures.
Right. And the Cain thing is interesting. It kind of flips the script on the biblical story, doesn't it?
Yeah, Cain's usually seen as the bad guy. But maybe in this old religion, he's seen differently.
Like they're challenging the established power structures, even in their mythology.
And then there are all these spells and rituals involving holy stone, rue, verbena. It's like straight out of folk magic.
It's got that earthy, practical feel to it. But then there's also the church service of the witch meetings, the benedictions of the witch supper. It's this interesting mix,
It's like they're blending local folk practices with something a bit more structured.
like maybe even drawing on ancient mystery cults, you know? Those were pretty big in Roman times.
Oh yeah, secret rituals, connecting with the divine. It all ties together. And Leland even hints that he could have written so much more.
And like Aradia is just the tip of the iceberg, this massive hidden world of Italian sorcery.
Right. And then he compares his work to another book, one that came out just a few years earlier, Il Romanzo dei Settimane by G. Cavagnari.
Cavagnari wrote about witchcraft among Lombard peasants, but basically dismissed it as nonsense.
Leland wasn't having any of that. He thought Cavagnari was missing the point entirely.
Yeah, Leland was trying to unearth something valuable, something with historical depth. He saw the gospel as evidence of this ancient counter-religion.
And I love that metaphor he uses. Disinter something from the dead volcano of Italian sorcery. It's so vivid.
It really captures that feeling of something powerful, something hidden for ages, suddenly being brought to light.
And he also points out that secret traditions like this exist all over the world.
Right. He talks about the Chippewa Midas, Black Voodoo. It's a universal thing, keeping knowledge hidden and protected.
He even tells this story about a Hungarian guy who secretly copied down spells. People really believed in the power of these words.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the survival of the gospel so incredible. Leland points out that so many of these writings were destroyed.
By priests, by people repenting their sins, even just out of fear. So for this gospel to make it through all that, it's pretty amazing.
It really is. So now let's get into the actual text of the gospel, starting with how Diana gave birth to Aradia. This part reads almost like a poem. What's the main story here?
Well, it's about Diana and her love for her brother, Lucifer, but not the devil Lucifer, you know.
Right. This Lucifer is the god of the sun and the moon, the god of light.
And he gets kicked out of paradise because of his pride. Then Diana and Lucifer have a daughter, Aradia, who's also known as Herodias.
So right off the bat, we've got a very different cosmology from what we're used to.
Totally. And then the story shifts to Earth, and we see all this suffering, the poor being exploited, people enslaved.
And this is where Aradia comes in. Diana sends her to Earth to teach witchcraft to the oppressed.
Like witchcraft is this tool for fighting back, for resisting those in power.
Exactly. And it gets pretty specific. Aradia is supposed to teach them how to poison lords, how to bind the spirits of their oppressors.
Even how to ruin the crops of greedy peasants by calling down storms.
It's definitely not your average, love potion and fortune-telling kind of witchcraft.
Not at all. And then there's that part where Diana tells Aradia not to be like Cain's daughter or the wicked and infamous Jews in Zingari. Those lines are a little rough.
Yeah, definitely some problematic stereotypes there that we need to address. It's important to remember that this text, like many historical documents, reflects the prejudices of its time.
We can't ignore those parts, but we also can't endorse those views. It's about understanding them in context.
Exactly. Leland was recording what he heard, and those biases were part of the world he was studying.
Right. Moving on, Aradia becomes the first witch and starts teaching others all these powerful spells.
And the poem is really clear about why she's doing this. It's about destroying the oppressors, the evil race, as it calls them.
It's witchcraft as a weapon for social change, a way for the powerless to fight back.
And then there's that rejection of the Christian Trinity, calling them three devils.
It's a straight-up challenge to the dominant religion. This old religion has its own gods, its own way of seeing the world.
And it offers hope to the poor, saying they'll be rewarded in the next life, while those who wrong them will suffer.
It's like their own version of justice. You
Yeah.
know? And then we get to the instructions for these monthly meetings, held on the full moon in secret places.
These are the witch gatherings, the Sabbats. They're all about worshiping Diana and learning the secrets of witchcraft.
And there's this promise that these practices can lead to freedom from slavery.
So it's not just about spiritual beliefs, it's about real-world change, about liberation.
And they're supposed to be naked for these rituals as a sign of that freedom.
It's like they're shedding the constraints of their everyday lives, returning to a more natural state.
The excerpt ends with a brief mention of the game of Benevento, which involves putting out the lights.
And then they have a supper. It sounds pretty mysterious, right?
It does. Okay, let's dive into the next section. The Sabbat, Treguinda, or witch meeting, how to consecrate the supper.
We're getting into the nitty-gritty of the rituals now.
And the witch supper is front and center. What are the main ingredients they use?
It seems simple enough. Meal, salt, honey, and water. But it's how they prepare it, the rituals they use, that make it special.
We have a whole conjuration of the meal, right? It's this beautiful, poetic address to the flower.
It's like they're talking to the flower as if it has its own spirit, its own secrets.
To talk about its origins underground, the milling process, the wind carrying it.
And they connect it to fireflies, which are said to light up the wheats so it can grow.
It's like they're saying the flower is connected to the sun, to the fairies, to the witches themselves.
It's amazing how they weave together these natural images with their magical beliefs.
So they actually call upon a firefly, the Luciola caporala, to reveal its secrets.
They promise it freedom in exchange for knowledge. It's like they're asking this creature of light to guide them.
And they also have a conjuration of the salt, although we don't have the full text of that one. Salt's always been a big deal in rituals, right?
Oh yeah, salt represents purification, protection, warding off evil.
So they're probably using it to cleanse the space, make sure the ritual is safe and sacred.
Right. And then they make these cakes out of the meal, wine, salt, and honey. But they're not just any cakes, they're shaped like crescent moons.
Like the symbol of Diana.
Mm,
It's all about connecting with her power, her essence.
exactly. And then they have the conjuration of Diana for the cakes. This is where it gets really intense.
They say they're not just baking with ordinary ingredients, they're transforming them into Diana's body, blood, and soul.
It's like they believe she's literally becoming present in the food.
And they ask her to grant them their desires, to not rest until they get what they want.
It's pretty powerful stuff. And if Diana grants their wish, they promise to have a feast with dancing, singing, music, and then love in the darkness.
With all the lights out, like in the game of Benevento we talked about earlier.
It sounds like a pretty wild party. And again, everyone's supposed to be naked. It's like they're casting off all the rules of society.
Totally. Then we get to a scene where Diana calls Aradia back from Earth, and there's a whole new ritual, the conjuration of Aradia.
This one happens at midnight in a field. They use water, wine, salt, and this red bag filled with salt like a talisman.
They bless themselves with the water and wine, and then they start calling upon Aradia.
And it's interesting how they describe her. They call her the daughter of the most evil spirit, Lucifer.
But they also say that her mother repented and wanted her to be good.
So it's like she's got this duality, this potential for both darkness and light.
And the person doing the ritual, they appeal to Aradia's goodness, her mother's love, to try and get what they want.
And if Aradia agrees, they're supposed to see 3 signs. A snake hissing, a firefly glowing, a frog croaking.
Those are all creatures that are associated with, like, hidden places, the mysteries of nature.
And if Aradia refuses, well, she's not going to have a good time. They say she'll have no peace until she grants their wish.
It's almost like they're trying to compel her to act, not just asking nicely, but putting on the magical pressure.
Exactly. Now, the last excerpt we have is about how Diana made the stars and the rain. It's basically a creation myth.
Yeah, explaining how the universe came to be.
And it starts with Diana as the first being, containing everything within herself.
Then she splits herself into darkness and light, and that light becomes Lucifer, her brother and son.
It's a pretty wild concept. And then Diana longs for Lucifer, and this longing becomes the dawn.
So it's not just a lunar deity, it's this primal creative force.
Right. But she can't be with Lucifer directly. She goes to these beings called the Fathers of the Beginning for advice.
And they tell her she has to become mortal, to fall, so she can rise again as the greatest of goddesses.
So she and Lucifer go to Earth when it's first created, and Diana starts teaching magic, which leads to witches, fairies, and goblins.
All these magical beings, all coming from her teachings. But then it gets weird. Diana takes the form of a cat to be with Lucifer.
His favorite fairy cat, no less.
Talk about a trickster goddess. And Lucifer is not happy when he finds out.
But Diana silences him with a song of power, a lullaby that puts him to sleep.
Magic is serious business in this world.
And it's not just about power, it's about creation too. They describe Diana's humming as the spinning wheel spinning life, with Lucifer turning the wheel.
It's like they're weaving the destinies of everyone. But even though she's so powerful, Diana hides herself as a mortal for a time.
But eventually, her passion for witchcraft leads her to rise above everyone else.
And to prove her power, she does something pretty crazy. At this gathering of sorceresses and fairies, she announces that she's going to darken the sky and turn the stars into mice.
Yeah, that's definitely not something you see every day.
And they say, okay, if you can do that, you're our queen. So how does she pull it off?
She takes an ox bladder, fills it with earth and mice, and then bursts it. Somehow, that causes the stars to turn into mice, and they run to the moon.
to Diana, right?
Hmm.
And she eats most of them, leaving only the biggest scars behind.
It's such a strange and imaginative myth. And then to create rain and wind, she just spits into the sea and blows.
So we've gone through a lot here. What are your big takeaways from all this?
Well, we've seen a very unique picture of Italian witchcraft, the way Leland understood it.
It's all about Diana and Aradia, these powerful goddesses, and it's presented as this alternative to the mainstream religion.
And there's this strong focus on the oppressed, using magic as a way to fight back, to achieve freedom.
It's a blend of mythology, folklore, rituals. You can really feel the depth of these beliefs.
And it's amazing to think that they survived for so long, passed down in secret, despite all the opposition.
It makes you wonder about how these beliefs might have shaped people's lives, given them hope, maybe even a sense of power in a world where they didn't have much.
Right, and it makes you think about the power of stories, of myths, to explain the world and give people meaning.
So for our listeners out there, we want you to think about something. Why are people drawn to alternative spiritual paths, especially those who have been marginalized, who have been pushed to the edges of society?
How do these stories of witchcraft, like the one we've explored today, reflect the power dynamics of their time? And how do they connect to this ongoing human search for meaning, for empowerment, both in this world and the next?
It's a lot to chew on, for sure. And that's what we're here for, to spark those conversations, to get you thinking.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Aradia.
Till next time, keep exploring.